Lucky Finn as a community is like a really important thing because, like, you know, when I was growing up, I didn't have like a big community, or like, especially with like internet was different and things like that. Like having Lucky Finn and being able to go onto a page and, you know, seeing parents ask questions about kids and saying like concerned about, oh, my daughter does this, is that normal? And it's like, yeah, I did that. I know plenty of people who do that. And what's cool about having like a family of people that you can talk to, like, you know, they have like hashtag Lucky Finn Squad and all that. Like, what you don't realize about two-handed people, like they don't realize as, like, you're the default. Like two-handed people are the default. And like us, like we're fine, but we don't live that way. Like we live as like an adaptive way. And going into a room where everybody's like you and we become the majority is the coolest thing. Like on that website, in this space, like we're the majority and we get to look at somebody like she holds something like I do. Oh, look, he does that same thing that I do the same way. And it's just a really cool experience.
Lucky Finn is a reference to the movie Finding Nemo, and Nemo was born with one fin smaller than the other, and his dad affectionately called it his lucky fin. And that's kind of how we referred to Ryan's difference when she was little, and kids would come up and ask what happened to her hand. And initially we'd always say, nothing happened to her hand, that's just the way she was born. And that answer sometimes wasn't good enough for a curious 6-year-old, so it would be followed with, well, have you ever seen the movie Finding Nemo? And Nemo had a little fin, his lucky fin, but he could swim across the ocean and he was very brave. And that reference was immediately picked up by the kids, and then it just sort of destigmatized any idea of her being different in a weird way. It was like, oh yeah, I get it. I get that Nemo had a lucky fin and she's got a lucky fin, so this is all just going to be fine.
There sort of is still the underlying subject that Nemo has his lucky fin, but you really don't remember that it's a disability or anything that's hindering him in any way, because it doesn't really hinder him. He knows how to like work with it and work against it to just be able to be sort of normal.
This is something, you've seen it before, it's fine. That's all it needs to be presented. Kids accept it that way. Like that's all you have to tell kids, that it's fine, and it's all about how things are presented, not as a negative thing, as something that just exists. And that's what I loved about Lucky Finn. When I heard about it, I was like, okay, an organization that's based off the fact that, you know, Nemo has this lucky fin. I was like, that's fantastic.
The term lucky fin is kind of, it seemed to be embraced as sort of a catch-all for an upper limb difference now. It's a friendly term. It's a lot easier to say than Symbrachydactyly or amniotic band syndrome or radial dysplasia or any of the other types of upper limb differences. And then even the term limb difference is something that not everybody is familiar with. They'll say amputee and things like that, or disabled, and those terms are fine. They never fit. I never felt that they fit my daughter. I certainly don't view her as disabled. As far as an amputee goes, she never lost anything. So that's just the way she was born. So limb different just seemed the most matter-of-fact, accurate term.
It's funny because like everyone comes up and they're like, do you have amniotic band, or was it like an umbilical cord, or like, you know, is it a genetic thing? And it's funny because when I was born, they really didn't know. They were like, okay, well, it's not genetic. It's like a random chance occurrence type thing. Could have been amniotic band, could have been an umbilical cord, could have been any of those things. And my mom kind of was just like, okay.
Back in 1985, when I was expecting my first child, ultrasounds were not done on a routine basis, and there was no reason to believe that there would be anything different about my pregnancy. So when I was in the delivery room, all I could see was the shocked look in my doctor's eyes, and I realized that there was a difference with my baby. I looked up and I could see my new son, my new baby, had been born without a left forearm and hand.
I don't know my specific medical term, to be honest with you. I know a lot of people get diagnosed with like amniotic band, and a lot of people in the Lucky Fin project, Symbrachydactyly, and a number of others. But for me, it was not something I ever had an exact name for. And I've seen different physicians and OTs and things at different clinics that I've done guest work at and things through the years, and I've heard all different kinds of things. So just me. It's my lucky fin.
I was born without my arm. My mom had no idea that I was going to be missing my arm. You know, back then ultrasounds weren't as good as they are now, so it's kind of a surprise.
Around 6-7 months, when I think when you can start to see what's happening, they could tell that the left arm wasn't forming like the right arm, and they could say it's not going to develop, or they just said something is wrong. And they found out when I got out.
My son was born in 2011 with Symbrachydactyly, which it's a limb difference. He has no fingers on his left hand. He has a thumb. And we didn't know while I was pregnant, and so it was a surprise to us, and we just didn't have any knowledge. It just kind of rocked our world.
I was born 5 weeks earlier than expected. The doctors didn't see any signs of my condition whatsoever on any scans, any ultrasounds beforehand. There was never any readings of it. And then when I was born, I was given this hand called a club hand. Basically, I'm missing the radius bone, which makes my hand curve.
I actually don't know the medical term for what I was born with. I was just born with one hand. My outlook has always been to not really ask why and to just roll with it.
I was born with pseudoarthrosis of the tibia, which basically meant that the bone in my leg was very weak. I would break all the time, and my foot wasn't growing properly. So by the time I was 4, my parents made the decision to amputate, which I think was the best decision that they could have made.
You know, there was never really an explanation to my parents what had happened. My parents actually didn't know until the day I was born. So it was kind of a surprise to my whole family.
It was, you know, in the delivery room that we first learned about Ryan's hand difference. It wasn't until maybe 3 hours later that we were finally alone, just my husband and myself and Ryan in the hospital room, and I just kind of lost it and had this like panicky train of thought of why her, why us, and what about the monkey bars, and what about the piano, and are people going to treat her different, and what if she doesn't have, you know, she's not going to have 10 fingers to paint like other girls do, and just like all these, you know, this like the train left the station of the worry train and the what if train. And my husband was really wonderful, and he the best thing he ever said was, instead of why her, why us, it was why not her, why not us.
When I was born, like my parents said, I didn't have a full right hand, so I just have a thumb and a few nubbins. And I've just been growing up knowing that.
She's not going to know anything different. We're never going to treat her anything different. And we got her for a reason. And that was pretty much it. We had a 20-minute conversation, and that was it. As far as the worry or concern about her hand difference. After that, I think the biggest like obstacle or hurdle we faced was getting answers from the medical community.
When I was a young mother of a child with a limb difference, there was not a lot of people that you could find that were all part of it. And so knowing all these people on the internet and everything has just been, I said earlier, it shrunk the world, you know, now that we're all together here in this park, and it's just been amazing.
It's a condition called Symbrachydactyly, and it was a surprise to my husband and I, so I didn't even know where to start looking. And of course, as a mom, you just start Googling, you know, and you hear the worst case scenarios. And 5 years ago, there was not a lot of information.
And that was part of the catalyst for eventually creating the Lucky Fin Project, was that we couldn't find any answers. Molly and I were searching for answers or other common occurrences or someone we could correspond with, and there really wasn't much out there. And I know Molly spent lots of time scouring the internet and trying to hook up with people, and just didn't have very much luck doing that.
Parents have told me that the bracelet is a really good way to get into a discussion about their child's difference, because nobody really walks into the room and says, by the way, my child has a limb difference, let me tell you all about it. But with the bracelets and things, when somebody compliments them on the bracelet, they say, oh, and they can tell the story, and then they can kind of back into, and by the way, my child has a limb difference. So it's a really good conversation starter. And then it's just a fun way to show support. And when people go places, they say, hey, I know what that is. That's a Lucky Finn bracelet, because they've seen it somewhere else.
That, in addition to bracelets and celebration, there's also the other aspect of the Lucky Finn project where we embrace new parents and new families and let them know, give them some reasons, give them some resources, give them some links to go to from hospitals and from doctors, so they can find out, for themselves. And there aren't those, numerous questions of how this happened, how often does it happen, why does it happen.
It's amazing. Within 5 years, the community that I found through Lucky Finn.
I wanted to create what I needed when Ryan was born. I wanted to create what, our awareness brochures, I made sure that they were colorful and they're inviting, and this is an invitation. This isn't what you need to know about having a limb different child. I wanted it to be like, hey, welcome. You're one of us. This is going to be okay. This is not a quality of life issue. This is not a bad thing.
That really gives them the education and helps unite and make this a real community of people with awesome kids.
Since then, I've just always gone forward. I've always cracked on. I've never ever let it bother me. I've never used it as an excuse to get out of anything. I've never moaned about it. My parents never ever let me moan about it. And that's why I've been able to come out and help organisations and have this positive mindset to try and improve and raise awareness for limb different kids and limb different adults who go through these day-to-day struggles.
For me, I've never really had a problem with the way I was born. It was accepted myself for who I was and determined that no matter how I am, I'm going to do what I want. It's really cool that I'm actually able to inspire people and motivate people and show people that it's possible. To me, I've always thought the human spirit was so strong, and that you could really do anything you want to do if you set your mind to it. And I feel like that's been proven time and time again. And I guess I'm just another instance of that. To me, it was never a mission to prove that. It was just a mission to just be the best version of myself, and everything else I got off that was just an added bonus.
I'm different, and that's fine. I used to do it all the time where I was like, we all have differences, and differences are okay. They're important. You need to be different. We don't all want to be the same. So technically, I think it's amniotic banding syndrome, but I've never really had looked into it enough to care. I'm like, eh.
I have learned very rapidly that there are several different terms that are used and several different ways to diagnose what a lot of people with limb differences have, whether it's amniotic band syndrome, Symbrachydactyly is another one, and I've kind of stopped paying attention to the terms as far as that goes, just because, I am what I am. I have one hand, whether you want to call it one thing or call it another. I know what it is, and scientific terms and knowing exactly what happened doesn't matter to me as much as developing into who I am.
There really wasn't, anything that my mom did wrong during the pregnancy. It was just more or less a fluke, and but it's more or less of a blessing than a fluke, honestly, because it's given my life a whole different path than what anybody would ever expect.
Now I really feel like I am being true to myself, and that this is me, and I really wouldn't want it any other way. People ask me if I wish that I was born with, two well-functioning legs, and the answer is no, because I like who I am now, and who knows who I would be if that wasn't the case.
There were a lot of times when I was younger, before I kind of had the realization that I should be outgoing, that I struggled with a lot of things. I mean, I used to walk around kind of hunched over with my arm in my pocket, trying to hide it. And so I was very shy when I was little about it, didn't like talking about it. And I know that there are lots of kids that struggle with that, and whether they're kids with limb differences or a disability or just any child who worries about being different, I want my book to show them that being different is not a bad thing. And then you can really use it to your advantage, and anyone is capable of that. So, I mean, if I can help one kid overcome some of the struggles that I faced when I was little, then my goal is met.
Don't ever speculate about other people's abilities and think just because they have one hand or one arm that they can't do something because they were born with that body, and they probably will prove you wrong is what I found. And it just given me a lot of confidence in being able to talk to other adults, outside the limb different community, and ask me, how did this happen? Why was your son born that way? And it gives me confidence. It gives my son confidence in himself and his ability to talk to other kids and explain why he was born that way.
It's hard when you're brand new at this to know what your future is going to hold and what your child's future is going to hold. And to see others, to see someone like Tony who's a musician, it just makes everything so okay, And so I feel I'm a person who likes to know I'm not alone in my feelings. And this shows everyone that you're not alone.
I will get a new parent emailing me saying, we just came back from our 21-week ultrasound. We know we're having a son. We know he's not going to have a hand. What do we do now? And number one, my first thing every time is, I'm so glad you found us, because I know we can help get rid of that fear and that worry and get that family reset to, we're having a baby. Not this, we're having a baby with a limb difference. Now, what does that mean? We're having a baby who happens to have a limb difference. Here's the Lucky Finn Project, and here's all the people who are involved, and here's what a 3-year-old with a limb difference acts like. Here's what a 5-year-old does. This is what your kid will be doing at 10 potentially. This is what your kid might be doing at 16. These people are musicians and athletes and models and actors, and they're doing it with what they have, and they're perfectly successful and happy and have completely full lives, and it's not a tragedy.
I think that a lot of people, when they first find out that they're going to have a child born physically different, start to do research and things like that, and the first things that they start to find now are like an organization like the Lucky Finn Project. The first things you're confronted with are not so much fear, but the opportunity to experience joy and to see the wonderful things that people do with all kinds of different physical differences. When
she was born, everybody came into the hospital room and assured us that she was going to do everything other kids could do. While a part of me believed that, it was really hard to envision that. So as she grew, she began doing everything that other kids could do. And it made me passionate about showing other parents in my situation what their future is going to be like. So the book is full of vibrant pictures of Emmy doing everything that everybody else can do with her amazing hand.
Empower your children, and they'll be just fine. I think a big part of what Lucky Finn Project does is works with the parents to help enable them to be more comfortable, to get rid of all those what ifs, and just love their kid. And if your kid wants to play baseball and doesn't have 2 hands, let them play baseball. Let them get out there and try. Whatever it is, I tell parents, don't take anything off the table just because they don't have 2 hands or 10 fingers, because that's just ridiculous, silly.
And then, of course, the 10 fingers are overrated. love that, because a lot of people, when they see people with one hand or a limb difference of any kind, they say like, oh, what's hard? Is this hard for you? And it's kind of like, it's fine. Like, we figured out a way to do it, and you would too.
The whole idea of the perfect baby or the perfect, 10 fingers, 10 toes. When Ryan was a baby, that's where we started saying that to each other, when she would crawl around the house and pick things up and pick them up with just her half thumb or half palm and thumb, and it would just hit you for a second. She just did that with her lucky fin, and then the next thing would be, well, 10 fingers overrated.
We find that these kids who were born with less fingers, or maybe not a hand or an upper limb difference, that's all they know out of the gate. So they have to grow and adapt and figure out different ways than what you or I would do with 10 fingers. They have to find their own way to do it. So we've kind of hypothesized that, well, because of that, these kids are born problem solvers, and they figure out ways to do things, and they just grow into be incredible kids with these incredible minds. Because out of necessity, they've had to use that part of their brain.
I will never forget when my daughter dropped her bottle on the floor. I mean, she couldn't even have been 1 yet. And she just automatically knew how to pick it up and flip it and stick it right in her mouth with one hand. But I would watch other babies do it, and they would fumble around with two hands and try to, manipulate it. So it came very naturally to her, doing things one-handed. So I don't think she had to adapt. I think the better word is just natural. It just happens. And you can't explain it, and it's just them doing what they do.
I've never had a problem doing anything that I wanted to do. I play music, but I also like, one of my favorite hobbies to do is play hockey, and I figured out a way to do that, and it came naturally. It wasn't even like a struggle, really.
If you lose an arm or you go blind at some point in your life, it's a lot difficult to adapt, because you once had it. Whereas my hand has always been this way to the right. I know how to grip things, I know how I can control things. For me, people question me with that all the time, but you just get on with it and
just give it a try. It might be very slow going at first, it might be painful, and you're gonna fail a lot. But don't worry about it, eventually you'll figure it out. There's usually a way to do whatever you're trying to do. I mean, I've seen girls with no arms and just their legs playing the violin, and that's I can't even play the violin with this, so I think anybody can do anything if they just want to try. And you might have to adapt to it. It might not be the same as everyone else, but you will find a way to do what you want to do.
It's so funny because I get a lot of kids that ask me about acting, and I think it's awesome because the whole thing I'm fighting for right now is representation. Like, we exist, and like in any film, you constantly look at it and you're like, that's not what New York looks like. That's not what my high school looks like. Everyone doesn't look perfect and, 5'10" and this size. In general, they need to diversify almost every cast. So it's not just the fact of like people with disabilities or persons with differences. It's everything. So I love talking to kids that are interested in going into acting because they should. Why not? They're just as interested as someone who has 4 limbs or, any other type of differences.
Building a cast on my arm that would help me to play, and over the course of about 8 years, I built a cast out of a really tough duct tape called Gorilla Tape, and that is how I hold my guitar pick in place. And now I'm a touring and traveling singer-songwriter. I've traveled all over the United States.
I got interested in music about 6th grade, and I picked up the trumpet first because that's a good instrument to do with one hand. One day I wanted to switch to percussion, and I asked the teacher, hey, can I do this? And she said, you can't play percussion because you lack 2 movable wrists. And I said, if Rick Allen from Def Leppard can figure it out, you could figure it out. So through trial, error, and just messing around, I eventually figured out how to play the drums using an elbow brace, other stuff, and that's 12, 11 years later, I'm still playing the drums, and now I'm different bands, going around the world.
I don't know how many years of me doing it. I started out with just playing with my thumb, and then I developed a thing with a like my own pick that I made out of a rubber thimble and a guitar pick, and I super glued the two together.
My mom decided from a very young age that she was going to raise me to try everything and do everything that was in front of me, and that led later down the road into an extreme love of music. And I decided as a teenager, when I was about 13 years old, that I wanted to learn how to play the guitar.
Certainly having one hand, there's certain things that are harder than other things. You know, you look at someone that has one hand or no hands or whatever, and it's a visible difference. It's something that you can see and you say, oh, that person's gonna have a hard time doing this. But the truth is that everyone has issues, everyone has problems, everyone faces adversity, so I don't feel like my road was any harder than anyone else's. It's just that you could see what I was going through. Maybe that makes it easier for some people to relate to, because they know that I had to work maybe a little bit harder to get to where I was, but I've always been able to do anything that I wanted to do.
That's where I've gotten to play people that happen to have one arm. And that's cool. That's something that finally they're starting to get into film, where they're representing diversity or accurate portrayal. We exist. We're just one-handed people that happen to be around. You don't need to explain us. I can be any of those characters without you being let me have a whole storyline and story arc about why she has one arm. No, I just have one arm, and that's fine.
Well, I don't want to be just the model with one hand. I want to be just a model who just happens to have one hand.
I can definitely say that Lucky Finn inspired me a lot to write uniquely me and to be where I am.
It's helped me because I can see other kids like me and know that I'm not alone, and I can just be proud that I'm different in a way.
I hope she knows that she's changing people's lives every single day. There's this group of people I can reach out to at any time on social media. This is my life now, and I never would have anticipated knowing all of these people. So it's incredible. Our children brought us all together, and it's really meaningful, and I'm just really grateful for it every single day.
If any little girl came up to me and said, I want to model, I would say, you have to be confident in yourself, and you have to know that you are beautiful the way you are unique, and that's a beautiful thing, and that's what the modeling industry now looks for, is uniqueness. It's something that the fashion industry never accepted, and now we've kind of grown into this phase where the modeling industry is now looking for models who are unique. So it's a great time for people like me.
I would say that it's a lot of work, but if you're willing to put in the practice hours, just like anything else, you'd certainly be able to do anything you set your mind to. I teach people with all kinds of different physical differences how to play, so I think it's totally possible. I encourage anybody to pick it up and try.
Find something you love and just run with it, and be the best version of yourself that you can possibly be, and then there will be never any pressure on you to be something else. If you work hard and you just give it everything you have, and you be the best version of yourself, you'll be surprised at how far you can go, because the best version of yourself is pretty damn good if you really give it everything you have. It's mental. A lot of it's mental. It comes down to believing in yourself and how bad you want it and how hard you're willing to work.
I see it as part of who she is. It's not a disability, it's a difference. And just like my first son was born with red hair, and my second born was blonde hair, and they're different. My daughter was born missing fingers, but she's just like my two boys. And my husband and I have come to realize that being different is very normal, because everybody's different. So I don't see it as a disability. I see it as a difference.
Being different is cool, and being different is awesome, and we shouldn't be afraid to be who we are.
Do what you do and do what you love, and you're not a one-handed person that does this. You're a person that does this that happens to have one hand.